Hey there, music lovers! Ever wondered how a small town kid from Anaheim ended up becoming one of the most unforgettable voices in American music history? Meet Bobby Hatfield, the dynamic half of the Righteous Brothers. His journey had it all: the thrill of meteoric success, the heartbreak of personal struggles, and the electrifying triumph of timeless hits like Unchained Melody. Strap in as we revisit his humble beginnings, follow his rise to stardom, and uncover the passion behind that legendary tenor that still captivates millions. Trust me, once you hear Bobby's story, you'll never listen to classic hits the same way again. Bobby Hatfield was born on August 10, 1940, in the Midwest, far from the bright lights of Los Angeles or the neon glow of Las Vegas. His father, Carl Hatfield, was a well-respected pharmacist. His mother, Thelma, was a woman of warmth and gentle encouragement who had an intuition about her son's future. When Bobby was only 4, the family relocated to Anaheim, California, a place then just on the brink of transformation. Disneyland was just a dream swirling in Walt's mind, and Orange County had yet to become the sprawling suburban wonderland it is today. Young Bobby quickly adapted to life out west, weaving baseball practices with Sunday church services and school choir rehearsals. Already his voice was a beacon. Even as a boy, classmates would stop and listen when he sang in the halls. Teachers would ask him to belt out a tune during assemblies. Churchgoers would linger after services to whisper words of praise to his parents. "There's something about that child," they would say, pointing to the invisible spark that crackled whenever Bobby opened his mouth. His grandmother, Thelma's mother, was his champion from the start. She was the one who encouraged him to push past any insecurities or fleeting fears, telling him stories of old-time crooners and the power of music to touch people's hearts. She passed in 1958, leaving Bobby with a profound sense of loss. But the legacy she planted in him, the unwavering belief in his abilities, would spur him forward. Even as he excelled in sports at Anaheim High, there was no doubt where his passion truly lay. He loved the cheer of crowds when he scored a touchdown or hit a home run, but it was the applause for his singing that most thrilled him, that struck a chord in his soul he couldn't ignore. He nurtured this gift by joining the Glee Club, performing in local bars whenever he could sneak in under the legal age, and soaking up the doo-wop and rock and roll swirling around Southern California at the time. By the time he enrolled at Cal State Long Beach, Bobby was more certain than ever that music was his ticket to the world beyond Anaheim. One day in a scruffy rehearsal room on campus, he met a group of like-minded vocalists. They formed a group called the Paramours, rotating in and out of local gigs for modest pay, finding their legs in an industry that was both alluring and merciless. At a show, Bobby locked eyes with a tall, deep-voiced singer named Bill Medley. Medley's baritone contrasted beautifully with Bobby's soaring tenor. In 1962, these two discovered how well their voices meshed, and at the time, they had no idea that a piece of music history had just clicked into place. It was on a night at the El Toro Marine Base, of all places, that they got their name. The Paramours were performing, and the crowd included many black Marines who were already enthralled by soul and rhythm and blues stylings. After one particular set, a group of Marines came up to Hatfield and Medley and in a moment of enthusiastic approval declared, "That's Righteous Brothers." Those words, so spontaneously given, stuck in their minds. They thought it had a ring to it, a sense of excitement, a perfect descriptor for music that aimed to be both heartfelt and spiritually charged. And so the Righteous Brothers were born, an identity that would soon be recognized from one coast to the other and eventually across the globe. They quickly signed with a small label called Moonglow Records. It wasn't the biggest name, but it was a start, a stepping stone for two hungry musicians ready to prove themselves. Their debut single in 1963 was Little Latin Lupe Lu, a kind of raw, rollicking track that captured the youthful energy they poured into everything. Though it only reached number 1, 49 on the Billboard Hot 100, that was enough to catch people's ears. Music fans noticed Bobby's high tenor weaving through Bill's baritone in a call and response that had a distinct quality. Soulful, gritty, and loaded with that intangible emotion people would come to associate with the term blue-eyed soul. The next phase of Bobby Hatfield's career would involve a fateful meeting with one of the most legendary and controversial producers in pop music history, Phil Spector. Spector was known for his wall of sound, a production technique that layered instruments to create a massive echoing effect like a sonic cathedral. He had taken notice of the Righteous Brothers' potential. In 1964, Spector's Phillies Records became their new home, and the duo was thrust into a higher tier of the music business. They recorded You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling, a track penned by the prolific songwriting duo Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil. From the very first note, it felt like destiny. Spector used all his trademark tricks: swelling strings, booming percussion, intricate vocal layering. Bill Medley would begin the song with that haunting baritone line, and then Hatfield would join in, slowly lifting the track into a gorgeous, mournful plea that soared above the orchestration. It was a revelation. In February of 1965, You've Lost That Lovin' Feelin' hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Suddenly, people everywhere recognized the Righteous Brothers. They'd walk into diners, department stores, or bars, and the record would be spinning. It sold over 2 million copies, and as decades passed, it would end up being crowned BMI's most played song of the 20th century. By the year 2000, it was estimated it had accumulated over 8 million radio spins, and even that might be a conservative count. Every spin validated those early predictions, those wide-eyed hopes that Bobby and Bill's vocals could tug at the hearts of the nation and keep them coming back for more. That was only the beginning of the hits. Just Once in My Life, released later in 1965, soared to number 1, 9. People couldn't get enough of the Righteous Brothers, but the next phenomenon, Unchained Melody, would elevate Bobby Hatfield to a higher plane of recognition. Written back in 1909 by Alex North and Hy Zarette, Unchained Melody had seen several renditions before, but no one could sing it like Bobby. On this track, he took the lead as a solo vocalist, unleashing his crystal-clear upper register to produce one of the most iconic recordings in pop history. That same year, it reached number 1, 4 on the charts. Over 2 decades later, it found a second life on the soundtrack to the film Ghost, starring Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, climbing to number 1, 13, and selling another million copies. No matter how many times it got played, there was something about Bobby's phrasing. The way he clung to the word touch, the slow build until that thrilling final note that could give people chills even if they'd heard it 1,000 times. However, life in the music industry is rarely smooth sailing, even for those seemingly on top of the world. The Righteous Brothers partnership didn't last continuously through the late 1960s. By 1968, personal ambitions, creative differences, and the exhaustion of constant touring led Hatfield and Medley to split. Bobby pursued a solo career, determined to prove he had more to offer than the glories of those timeless duets. In 1971, he recorded an album called Messin' in Muscle Shoals at the legendary Muscle Shoals Sound Studio, a place known for churning out countless soul and rock masterpieces. That record had a modest single, Hang-Ups, which made it to number 92 on the Hot 100. Commercial success, however, proved elusive. The same unstoppable momentum Bobby experienced under the Righteous Brothers banner was far more difficult to replicate as a solo artist. Yet through these years, he never lost that luminous vocal power, even if the charts weren't paying attention. He found himself facing the harsh reality that being a big name once doesn't guarantee an ongoing place in the spotlight. The early 70s ushered in new musical styles. Folk rock, disco, funk, and the old-school balladeers sometimes struggled to fit in. That's when reuniting with Bill Medley started to seem more and more like a good idea. In 1974, the Righteous Brothers came back together and released Rock and Roll Heaven on Haven Records, a heartfelt tribute to rockers who had passed away, referencing legends like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and others. It soared to number 1, 3 on the Hot 100, proof that even though times had changed, the Righteous Brothers' distinct sound still resonated. They launched themselves into extensive tours, playing places like Vegas showrooms, state fairs, and making regular appearances on TV variety programs, including The Ed Sullivan Show, at least in the earlier heyday. The comeback was genuine, at least for a while. And for fans who loved that glorious combination of baritone and tenor, it was a gift to see them back on stage together. The 1980s rolled around, and once again, the world turned its ear to Unchained Melody. This was a song that simply refused to be forgotten, a timeless gem that critics like to describe as impervious to the ravages of time. Its reappearance in pop culture might have been partially overshadowed by new wave or big hair metal at the time, but the Righteous Brothers consistently found ways to incorporate it into their performances, and its romance was never lost on the audience. Then came 1990 and the blockbuster movie Ghost. The pottery wheel scene featuring Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore reignited a global frenzy for Unchained Melody. Moviegoers left theaters humming that tune, heading straight to record stores, still relevant at the time, to purchase the Righteous Brothers' old hits. The track shot up the charts once more, reaching number 1, 13, and shipping another 1 million copies. It was an extraordinary second win for a song first penned 8 decades prior. This revival led to the release of The Very Best of the Righteous Brothers in 1990, which climbed to number 1, 14 on the Billboard Catalog Albums chart, further proving that the group still had a massive fan base. They put out an album called Reunion in 1991, which didn't set the charts ablaze but demonstrated their steadfast dedication to making music together. Through all the peaks and valleys, Bobby Hatfield remained an artist who refused to simply vanish into memory. The Righteous Brothers' hits continued to spin on oldies stations, conjuring images of drive-ins and vinyl records. Hatfield's personal life, meanwhile, had its own share of drama and joy. He married Barbara McClanahan in 1962, right before the big breakthrough. They had 2 sons, Bobby Jr. and Kalen. Time on the road placed endless strain on many marriages, and their relationship was no exception. By 1976, the touring lifestyle and personal complications had taken their toll, and the marriage ended in divorce. Hatfield struggled to maintain normalcy. To be a father to his 2 boys, he still tried, calling from the road, sending postcards and gifts. But the music industry can swallow people up like a riptide. His second marriage to Linda Torreson in 1979 brought a different dynamic. They had 2 more children together, Valen, born in 1980, and Dustin, born in 1983. The family settled in Corona del Mar, a picturesque coastal haven in Southern California. Linda remained by his side until the end, braving the storms of showbiz with a quiet devotion and the hope that he would someday find peace. But Bobby's biggest challenges weren't purely external. From the 1970s into the 1990s, he grappled with addiction, cocaine and alcohol being the most significant. Like so many entertainers of that era who were swept into a glamorous yet cutthroat environment, he found that drugs and drink were too easy an escape from the stress of touring, the anxiety of maintaining star status, and the general restlessness of a performer's life. In 1978, he was arrested for drug possession and fined $500, which was more of a slap on the wrist than a wake-up call. True change wouldn't come until 1982, when he finally checked into rehab, acknowledging that he was losing control. He later admitted to People magazine in 1990 that he lost years to the pipe. Yet in that interview, he sounded hopeful, proclaiming he had found his voice again, both literally and metaphorically. One particularly harrowing event in 1985 might have been the true turning point. A car accident in Vegas that left him with minor injuries but a shaken spirit. He realized he was dancing too close to the edge. The next step was to embrace sobriety and a more stable life, emphasizing his family and his health. In interviews after that incident, he often spoke about living on borrowed time and how the brush with potential tragedy gave him a renewed sense of gratitude. Still, the latter part of Bobby Hatfield's career wasn't entirely sunshine and smooth sailing. Though the Righteous Brothers performed regularly through the 1980s and into the 1990s, pop culture's attention was constantly pivoting to new idols, new genres. There were times they felt relegated to nostalgia circuits or pigeonholed into performing their hits for crowds who wanted to relive the 60s just for one night. But that voice of Bobby's never dimmed. Night after night, he'd push himself to hit those impossible high notes, to reignite the flames of audience passion by delivering Unchained Melody in a way that sounded as fresh as it had decades before. Critics might have quibbled about how many new hits they were putting out, but fans who came to see them live never left disappointed. For them, it was always worth it to hear Bobby soar, channeling the same energy he had as a young man in Anaheim, discovering that music could be his calling card to the world. It was in 2003 that a sudden tragedy shocked fans everywhere. Bobby Hatfield, at the age of 63, was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, ready to perform alongside Bill Medley. Hours before the show, he was found lifeless in his hotel room. The official cause of death was a heart attack, though an autopsy would later reveal cocaine in his system, which likely triggered the fatal arrhythmia. For fans, it felt like a heartbreak on par with losing one of the greats of any generation, because that's precisely who Bobby Hatfield was, a vocalist of such singular power that he seemed to defy the passage of time. His ashes were scattered off the shores of Newport Beach, close to the beloved waters of Southern California that he called home for so many years. A memorial service was held at the House of Blues, drawing a crowd of admirers and collaborators, including Bill Medley and Phil Spector, a man who played such a pivotal role in the Righteous Brothers' rise. The outpouring of love was a testament to the huge impact Bobby had. 1 million music fans let their minds wander back to that young guy with the killer tenor who had once made them cry with songs like Unchained Melody. He left behind Linda, 4 children, and countless admirers who cherished the singular purity of his voice. Reports of his death rippled through the media. For a time, rumors flared that it might be a hoax. But soon enough, the sad reality was confirmed. The Righteous Brothers, as the world knew them, would never again share the stage. Bill Medley continued performing, pairing with a new partner, Bucky Hurd, to keep the spirit of the Righteous Brothers alive, but everyone knew there was no replacing Bobby. He was an original in the truest sense, a man whose delicate tremor and power belied his small stature, whose sincerity allowed him to breathe new life into a decades-old ballad, and whose passion pulled audiences into the sheer romance of a well-sung lyric. In 2003, the Righteous Brothers were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a belated but fitting honor for their contributions to popular music. The timing was bittersweet. Hatfield wasn't physically there to receive the accolade, but the recognition felt like a cosmic nod to the incredible work he had done on Earth. By that point, they had a record of 12 charted singles, 4 top 10 hits, and over 10 million records sold. Yet focusing solely on those statistics would be missing the point of Bobby Hatfield's place in music history. For him, it was always about the emotional resonance that a gifted singer can summon, about that intangible hush in a room full of people who suddenly stop their conversations to listen. That's the real legacy. In the years following his death, tributes poured in from fellow artists. Younger singers, some not even born when You've Lost That Love and Feeling reigned supreme, cited him as an inspiration. They'd post covers on early YouTube, earnestly trying to replicate the iconic runs. Most would come away with a new appreciation for just how hard it is to tackle a Hatfield vocal. Now flash forward to 2025. New waves of music have emerged. Streaming platforms have revolutionized how people access songs, and the ephemeral nature of the internet churns out trends at breakneck speed. Yet Unchained Melody finds itself near the top of streaming charts once again, a gentle reminder that classics of this magnitude don't simply vanish. They keep being rediscovered by fresh audiences in new eras. Nostalgic parents introduce their kids to that track during family road trips. Netflix or Hulu might feature it in the soundtrack of a nostalgic drama, and it even finds its way into popular reality shows like The Masked Singer. Each time a new performer attempts to take on its formidable melody, they're effectively paying homage to Bobby Hatfield, the man who shaped the definitive version that still sends shivers down spines. In 2024, a documentary titled Righteous Brothers, Soul and Heart airs on PBS, delving deep into their history, the cultural context, and the synergy between Bill and Bobby. Archival interviews show Hatfield cracking jokes backstage, earnestly warming up that voice that could suddenly soar into the heavens at a moment's notice. Younger generations watch and marvel at the haircuts, the fashion, the black and white footage, and then the moment the pair open their mouths to sing, everything goes still again, as if time has collapsed and the only thing that matters is the chord they're holding. Beyond the music, the documentary highlights Hatfield's journey as a man, the child who followed his father around a pharmacy stocked with glass bottles of elixirs and powders, the teenager whose grandmother's encouragement kept him pushing forward through local gigs, the young adult forging alliances in dusty rehearsal rooms and smoky clubs, and the adult who faced addiction, overcame it, found love and heartbreak, experienced the euphoria of stardom, and then the humbling resets that life often imposes. It showcases the heartbreak of losing him so suddenly, on the cusp of a performance that might have introduced one more night of musical magic to an awaiting audience. But it also underscores how deeply he is remembered. At the documentary's conclusion, Bill Medley speaks in a hushed tone about how certain voices are simply gifts from above, meant to guide us through our joys and sorrows. Bobby Hatfield, he insists, had one of those voices, a voice that remains embedded in the fabric of American pop and soul music. That's the Bobby Hatfield story, a boy from Anaheim who harnessed an astonishing voice, found fame side by side with Bill Medley as the Righteous Brothers, sang some of the greatest ballads of the 20th century, battled personal demons, reclaimed his life through sobriety, and left behind a golden standard for emotive singing that countless artists still strive to emulate. Even if you don't know the backstory, even if you can't name more than a couple of their tracks, hearing Bobby Hatfield hold a note has a way of lodging itself in your memory. Long after the final applause died down on those Vegas stages, long after the last radio DJ spun the final track of a golden oldies marathon, his voice remains a testament to passion, resilience, and the sheer power of music to outlast the individuals who bring it to life.